Hi, sir. My late father had the same birthmark, right there. The silver fork froze midair. Raymond Whitmore, the billionaire whose name graced half the buildings in downtown Chicago, stared at the young woman standing beside him. Her hand was steady despite the tremble in her voice, her eyes locked on the inside of his left wrist. He blinked once, then slowly, almost wearily, followed her gaze. There it was, a faded crescent-shaped birthmark, barely the size of a nickel, the same one he had been born with, the same one he had never thought twice about until now. The moment stretched thin. The dining hall buzzed around them with laughter, clinking glasses, and the low hum of jazz from the corner stage. But at table 7, everything stopped. Raymond slowly lowered his fork. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice measured, controlled. Maya took a step back, her apron brushing the edge of the tablecloth. Her hand still gripped the pitcher of water tightly, but her words were already out, hanging in the air, heavy. "I didn't mean to disturb you," she said quickly. "It's just, my mom used to say, if I ever met a man with a birthmark like that, right on the wrist, I should remember it because my father had one too." Raymond's gaze sharpened. His assistant, seated to his right, leaned in immediately, whispering something curt. Raymond didn't respond. He just looked at Maya, not angry, not amused, but stunned. His lips parted as if to say something, but no words came. Maya nodded, swallowed her breath, and stepped away. She turned toward the kitchen entrance, the noise of the room crashing back into her ears. She felt the eyes on her, some curious, some dismissive, others indifferent. She kept walking. Behind her, Raymond watched her go. His shoulders stiffened, his hand drifted toward his wrist, thumb brushing across that small, familiar mark. He hadn't thought about Elise in years, and suddenly her name slammed into him like a wave. Elise William, Savannah, 2001. The girl with paint-stained hands and eyes like the edge of dusk. The girl his family said would ruin him. The one he had let walk away because he hadn't had the spine to stand beside her. The one who had vanished from his life just months after they'd said goodbye on that stone bridge by the river. She'd never told him she was pregnant. He never knew. Now, here was this young woman. Her voice, her posture, her fire, and something deep inside him shifted. Could it be? But no, it was impossible, wasn't it? He didn't speak again for the rest of dinner. Maya, back in the staff corridor, stood silently at her locker, numb to the reprimand her manager was giving her. Words like unprofessional, boundary, and VIP experience drifted in and out. None of them stuck. All she could think about was the look in the man's eyes, not anger, but recognition. The kind of look you give a memory that refuses to die. That night, as the Chicago wind curled through the narrow alleys of South Side, Maya sat alone in her room. She didn't cry. She didn't write. She just stared at the small photo of her mother taped to the corner of the mirror, Elise, age 21, holding baby Maya in a hospital gown. She reached into her drawer and unfolded a yellowed envelope with no address. A letter her mother had written but never sent. To the man who never knew, if our daughter ever finds you, please be kind. Please be better than silence. Maya's voice cracked as she whispered to the air, I think I found him, Mom. Somewhere across the city, in a penthouse cloaked in glass and silence, Raymond Whitmore stood alone by the window, his left wrist exposed under the moonlight. He stared at the mark. For the first time in decades, his heart whispered a name he thought he'd forgotten, Elise. In that silent exchange between a girl holding on to her mother's final words and a man finally facing the weight of all he had lost, something unspoken was healed. Tap the like button if you too support Maya in finding her roots. Let us know in the comments where you're watching this video from. You never know, someone nearby might be watching and feeling the same way at this very moment. Raymond hadn't left his penthouse since the gala. The city outside his floor-to-ceiling windows shimmered with movement, but inside, everything was still, like the moment between inhale and exhale. He hadn't eaten dinner, hadn't checked the messages blinking on his phone. He just sat in the leather armchair, elbow resting on his knee, fingers tapping gently on the soft patch of skin on his left wrist. That girl, Maya, her voice hadn't left his ears. Her face haunted him. And that name, Elise William. He hadn't said it aloud in 21 years, not since the summer she disappeared. He closed his eyes, and Savannah came rushing back, humid evenings, crickets in the magnolia trees, and Elise standing barefoot in his family's garden. She used to hum when she painted, oils, mostly bold colors, unapologetic strokes. He loved that about her, how she never apologized for being visible. Until his father saw them together. Until the phone calls started. Until he was summoned to the family estate and told in no uncertain terms, "You are not to disgrace our legacy with this entanglement." He didn't fight it. He convinced himself it was easier that way. Elise had left town without a word a few weeks later. He never knew why, never had the courage to find out. Until now. He opened his laptop, hands stiff with hesitation. He typed her name slowly into the search bar, Elise William, Savannah, Georgia. A few records popped up. An obituary, 8 years ago. Cervical cancer. Survived by one daughter, Maya Elise William. No father listed. His throat tightened. He clicked on the obituary photo. It was her, older, yes, but those same eyes, same slight tilt of the head. The name of the funeral home appeared at the bottom of the page, Hillcrest Chapel, Savannah. He closed the laptop, sat back in his chair, and whispered, "She never told me." Across town, Maya stirred her soup absently at Mrs. Evans' kitchen table. The old woman stood over the stove, back slightly hunched, glasses perched on her nose as she stirred something in a pot. "He saw it," Maya said softly. "The birthmark." He didn't say anything, but I saw the way his hand shook. Mrs. Evans turned around, holding a wooden spoon. "Some men shake because they've seen a ghost, child. Others because they see truth too late." Maya looked up, her face pale under the kitchen light. Did she ever tell you who he was?" Mrs. Evans sighed. "She said his name once, years ago. Raymond. I didn't know the last name until she showed me a photo in some magazine. He was just starting out then. She said he had kind eyes but a weak backbone." Maya gave a short breath. "She never told me that. She didn't want you hating a ghost. And she sure didn't want you chasing one." "I'm not chasing anyone," Maya said, "but I deserve to know where I come from, don't I?" Mrs. Evans nodded slowly. "You do. But you need to decide what you're after. Truth and justice don't always look the same." The next morning, Raymond sat in his private office on the 38th floor, files scattered across the desk. He had called in his personal investigator, a retired FBI agent named Theo Carter, a man who owed him more favors than he could count. "I need confirmation," Raymond said, sliding across the obituary and the photo. "Her mother, Elise William. I need everything, where she lived, when she died, where the daughter's been." Quietly, discreetly. Theo raised an eyebrow. "Is this legal or moral?" "I'm not asking for surveillance. I'm asking for clarity." Theo nodded. "Give me 48 hours. Raymond leaned back, but he couldn't sit still. His mind kept drifting to her face, to the way she didn't look like she wanted anything from him. That alone made it worse. He wasn't used to being unneeded. He picked up the letter again. It was one Elise had written in 2002, found among the hospital records Theo had scanned years ago, but Raymond had never read until now. In faded ink, the first line said, "You never fought for me, but I hope you'll fight for her if she finds you." He set the letter down and pressed his fingers to his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt the overwhelming weight of a life half-lived. That night, Maya sat on her bed, the laptop warming her knees, fingers hovering above the keyboard. She had typed and erased the same sentence 10 times, I think I know who my father is. She switched tabs, clicked through article after article about Raymond Whitmore. A story caught her eye. An old interview where he mentioned he spent summers in Savannah during college. Another article quoted him saying, "We build luxury on forgotten land." Forgotten land. Her stomach turned. She thought of her mom, how hard she'd worked at the downtown art studio, then took on waitressing after the cancer got worse. How she'd always said, you don't need a name to know your worth. And yet, here Maya was, chasing one. She clicked open a new blog draft, titled it, The Girl with No Father and a Birthmark Full of Questions. Her fingers flew across the keys. I met a man last night. He didn't recognize me, but I think he recognized something, a mark on his wrist, and maybe something more. I was raised never to expect, but maybe it's time I demand the truth. This isn't a story about wanting money. It's about identity. It's about a girl who grew up in silence and a man who may have built empires on forgetting her mother. So, if you're reading this, Mr. Whitmore, I'm still here, and I have questions that won't stay buried anymore. She hit save, draft, not publish. Not yet, but it was coming. Because the silence was becoming too loud to bear. Raymond didn't sleep that night. The city lights flickered below his penthouse window like restless thoughts, never settling. After Maya drifted from his line of sight, after her voice triggered a name he'd buried, he couldn't ignore the pull anymore. By morning, a slim file rested on his desk. Theo Carter was fast. Inside were hospital records from Savannah General, Elisa's death certificate, property tax records for a modest apartment in Southside Chicago, and, most chilling, a kindergarten enrollment form from 2007. Under "Father's name," the line was left blank. But there, clipped to the last page, was a photo taken just days ago, Maya stepping out of a subway station, headphones in, a sketchpad tucked under her arm. She looked nothing like the girl he remembered, but something in her walk. Her shoulders slightly squared despite the wind, her gaze steady despite the world around her, was Elise. Undeniably Elise. Raymond sat back in his chair, the file open on his lap, and whispered aloud, "Why didn't you tell me?" But deep down, he knew. Because she tried, and he had been too cowardly to open the letters. Or maybe he hadn't wanted to be reminded of the one part of his past not polished, not public, not planned. Maya didn't tell anyone she'd gone to the library that afternoon. She found herself drawn there, not for books, but for memory, a safe place to think, to process, to breathe. In the quietest corner of the archives, she sat at a microfilm machine, scrolling through Savannah newspapers from 2001. She didn't know what she was looking for exactly, maybe a name, a mention, something. And then there it was, a brief article buried on page 6 of the Savannah Times, July 2001. Whitmore Development announces Riverside Project. The image was black and white, grainy, but she recognized him, Raymond, younger, standing next to a small group of city officials. In the far left edge of the photo, barely visible, was her mother, an easel behind her, a single paint-smeared hand frozen mid-wave. Her mother had been there at the announcement, not just as a bystander. Maya zoomed in until the image pixelated. Her heart pounded. Beneath the photo was a caption, "Local artist Elise William assists with mural concept." And that was it. No mention of what came next. No word on how Elise left town. No headline saying she'd been erased from the story before it was ever written. Maya sat back, hands trembling, throat thick. All her life, she'd believed her father simply disappeared. But what if it wasn't that simple? What if someone had disappeared her mother instead? The next morning, her blog post was no longer a draft. Maya hit publish. Within hours, it had gone viral across small corners of the internet. Forums for children of absent parents, communities of black artists, and even a few think pieces on wealth and responsibility. Raymond read it at his desk, every word, "I don't want inheritance. I don't want headlines. I want answers. I want to know if the man with the billion-dollar buildings remembers the woman with paint on her hands. And if he doesn't, I want him to try. He closed the laptop slowly. Something inside him settled, and something else cracked. He had spent years building an empire, adding zeros to his name, sculpting an image of control and silence, but none of it had prepared him for a 21-year-old voice asking if he remembered love. He called Theo again. I need the contact number for Maya William. Why? I'm requesting a meeting. Theo paused. Sir, may I ask what you're hoping she'll say? Raymond didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, I'm not hoping for anything. I'm hoping to listen. When Maya got the call from an unknown number, she didn't answer at first. The voicemail was short, a male voice, steady, Miss William, this is Raymond Whitmore. I'd like to speak with you privately, at your convenience. She didn't call back that day or the next. Instead, she took the train across town back to Mrs. Evans' apartment. She found the older woman pruning her front window plants, humming an old Ella Fitzgerald tune. He reached out, Maya said, standing in the doorway. Mrs. Evans didn't turn. And what did you say? Nothing yet. That's still saying something. Maya stepped inside, dropped her bag near the couch, and lowered herself into the armchair across the room. Do you think he knew? She asked quietly. All this time? I think some men don't ask the question because they're afraid of the answer, Mrs. Evans replied. And others because they already know. Maya looked out the window. A kid rode past on a bike, laughing. Somewhere in her chest, a sharp ache twisted. Do I meet him? She asked. That depends. Are you looking for a father or just the truth? Maya didn't answer. She didn't know. Later that evening, she stood on the corner of Jackson and 19th, phone in hand, screen glowing. One number, one chance. She dialed. It rang only once. Mr. Whitmore, she said softly. Yes, Maya. She nodded, then remembered he couldn't see her. Yes, I got your message. I appreciate that, he said, voice calm but not cold. Would you allow me to meet you tomorrow morning, just to talk? Maya hesitated. The word caught in her throat, but then she remembered her mother's letter, yellowed and fragile, be better than silence. Yes, she said. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. I'll send you the cafe address. As she hung up, something heavy inside her loosened, not disappeared, but moved. Tomorrow would come, and with it, maybe the beginning of something that had been denied to them both for far too long. The bell above the cafe door gave a soft chime as Maya stepped inside. It was a small corner place on the south side, not far from the old art supply store her mother used to frequent. The wood-paneled walls were lined with local paintings, some vivid and modern, some so old they looked like memories themselves. She chose this cafe deliberately. If she was going to face the man who might be her father, she wanted the walls around her to remember her mother. Raymond was already seated in the back, alone. No assistant, no briefcase, just a black wool coat folded neatly over the chair beside him and a porcelain cup untouched on the table. Maya hesitated for just a second, then crossed the room. He stood when he saw her. Maya, he said softly. She nodded. Mr. Whitmore. He gestured to the seat across from him. She sat without taking off her coat. Neither spoke at first. She didn't want to go first. She had gone first her whole life, first to ask, first to care, first to be left waiting. Let him speak. Raymond cleared his throat. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Maya looked him in the eye. I didn't do it for you. He accepted that. I understand. Silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was heavy, shared. I read your blog, he said finally. All of it. Then you know why I'm here. He nodded. You want answers? No, she said firmly. I deserve them. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. I didn't know about you, he said after a beat. Not until the other night when you said what you said. I saw her. I saw Elise in your face, and that shook me in a way I wasn't ready for. Maya blinked fast but didn't look away. You say you didn't know. But did you ever wonder? Yes, he admitted. In the early years, I did. After Elise left, I thought about it. I considered reaching out. But my life, my family, he stopped himself. That's not an excuse. I was a coward. Yes, Maya whispered. You were. He nodded. And I will live with that for the rest of my life. The coffee between them went cold. She painted you, you know, Maya said suddenly. My mom, she painted you, even when she hated herself for it. Every canvas was a memory you didn't earn. Raymond's throat moved, but he said nothing. She said you had kind eyes, Maya added, her voice more brittle now. I never believed her until now. Raymond leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands clasped. I would give anything to undo what I failed to do back then. But I can't. All I can offer now is whatever truth, acknowledgement, or presence you'll allow me to give. Maya stared at him, studying every line in his face, the wrinkles near his eyes, the silver near his temples, the weight of time. I'm not here for your money or your name. I don't want a house or a trust fund. I believe you, he said quietly. I just want to know. Her voice caught, so she steadied it. Did you love her? Did you love my mother? He didn't look away. Yes, I did. More than I had words for back then. More than I had courage to admit. Maya's eyes welled, but she blinked the tears away before they could fall. And me, she asked, even softer now. Do you think, if you'd known, would you have wanted me? Raymond reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded photograph, creased and faded. He placed it on the table between them. Maya leaned forward. It was a black and white photo of Elise standing barefoot beside a river, pregnant, her hands resting on her belly. She looked radiant, strong, alone. She sent this to me once, he said. I never opened the envelope, not until last week. Maya pressed her hand over her mouth. I didn't want to know because knowing would have made me accountable, and I was a man too weak to be accountable. He looked at her. I'm not asking you to forgive that, but I am asking if you'll let me try now. For a long moment, Maya couldn't speak. The room felt smaller, the light more golden, and her mother's voice echoed again in her memory. If he ever shows up, don't hate him. Just ask him if he's different now. She met his eyes again. I don't hate you, but I don't know you, and I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to decide today, he said gently, or tomorrow. I'll take what you offer. The waitress brought fresh coffee, but neither reached for it. Finally, Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a small hand-drawn sketch. She placed it beside the photo. It was a portrait of Elise, smiling, head tilted, a moon-shaped birthmark drawn faintly on the wrist of the woman's imagined companion. Raymond stared at it. His hands trembled as he touched the edge. You drew this? He asked. I was 10, Maya said. I didn't know what you looked like, so I made you up. He swallowed hard. You gave me more kindness than I deserved. She stood, slipping her bag over her shoulder. This isn't kindness. This is memory. He nodded. Will you let me see you again? I don't know, she said, but I'll think about it. She turned to leave, pausing only once at the door. I don't need a father. I never had one, and I've made it this far. But if you want to be someone I can respect. That would matter more than biology ever did. With that, she walked out into the morning sun, leaving Raymond alone, the sketch in one hand and his silence in the other. Raymond sat in the back of his limousine, the sketch still in his hand. He hadn't spoken a word since leaving the cafe. The driver didn't ask questions. She'd worked for Raymond long enough to know when silence wasn't just quiet, but sacred. He stared at the portrait Maya had drawn at age 10. The pencil lines were shaky, the proportions imperfect, but there was something in it, something heartbreakingly hopeful. A child imagining a man she'd never met but dared to believe could be good. When he returned to the penthouse, Raymond went straight to the study, no coat removed, no lights turned on. The late afternoon sun filtered in through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the floor. He unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk, the one he hadn't opened in years. Inside were 3 envelopes, yellowed with time, all addressed in the same delicate handwriting, Elisa's. He picked up the first one and opened it for the second time in his life. His hands were steady now, no more avoidance. Dear Raymond, if you're reading this, it means you stopped pretending the past didn't matter. I wish I had been braver. I wish you had, too. I left because I was told to, because I was afraid of what your name would do to our future. I was alone. I didn't tell you because I didn't want our child to grow up knowing she was the result of shame. But she isn't. She is bright. She is fierce. And she deserves more than a ghost for a father. If she finds you one day, I hope you remember how to love out loud. Elise. Raymond sat back in his chair, the paper trembling in his hands now. He'd built a career on controlling every outcome, anticipating every risk, but no business deal had ever left him this exposed. No investor had ever made him feel this vulnerable. And yet, Maya had, with a look, with a drawing, with a sentence, be someone I can respect. He folded the letter more carefully this time and placed it in his inner coat pocket. This one he would keep close. Maya didn't tell Mrs. Evans about the meeting right away. That night, she just sat at the kitchen table, slicing apples with robotic precision, listening to the evening news hum in the background. Mrs. Evans knew better than to press. Finally, Maya said, he brought a picture. Mrs. Evans turned from the stove. Of who? My mother, pregnant, standing by the river. The older woman sat down across from her. He kept it all these years. Maya nodded. Never opened the envelope until last week. Mrs. Evans let out a slow breath. Guilt's a strange thing. Sometimes it grows quieter the longer you ignore it, but when it finally speaks, it doesn't whisper. Maya set the knife down. He said he loved her. Said he didn't know about me. Do you believe him? I don't know, Maya admitted. I want to, but I don't know if that's because it's true or because I need it to be. Mrs. Evans reached across the table and placed a weathered hand over Maya's. Needing something doesn't make it any less real. It just makes it human. The next morning, Raymond made another call, this one to his lawyer, Paul Atkins. I need to amend my will, he said. There was a pause. Are we talking percentages or people? Both, Raymond said. There's someone I need to include. Her name is Maya William. Atkins didn't ask more. He'd been with Raymond too long to be surprised by the unexpected. But even so, he said gently, that's a big step, sir. Are you sure? No, Raymond said, but it's the first step I've been afraid of in years. That tells me it matters. After hanging up, Raymond spent the rest of the day reviewing old documents, foundation plans, property deeds, letters Elise had once sent to his office but never got past the assistant. One in particular caught his eye. It had been stamped "Returned to Sender" in red. Elise had tried to reach him. She hadn't vanished. She had been turned away. He stared at that envelope for a long time. Then, with new determination, he placed it next to Maya's sketch on his desk. If Elise had fought to be seen, he would not let her daughter remain invisible. That evening, Maya checked her email and saw a message from Raymond. No subject line, just, you don't owe me anything, but I owe you both acknowledgement. I'm holding a press event in 3 days. Not for publicity, for truth. I won't mention your name unless you allow it. But I want to tell the world what I didn't have the courage to say 2 decades ago, that she mattered, and so do you. Maya read the message 3 times. Then she closed her laptop and stepped out onto the apartment balcony. The city stretched below her, vast and indifferent. And yet, somewhere in it, something was shifting, something ancient, like silence breaking after too many years. She didn't know yet if she wanted the world to know her name. But she knew one thing: if Raymond spoke, if he truly stood up, not for her, but for the woman who raised her, then maybe she wouldn't have to carry the weight of being forgotten anymore. Inside, she opened her old sketchbook, the one her mother had given her on her 15th birthday. On the first page was a note in Elisa's handwriting: "Art is truth with a heartbeat. Use it when the world stops listening." Maya smiled, grabbed her pencil, and began to draw again. Not out of anger or grief, but because the silence had finally started to make room for her voice. 3 days later, the Whitmore Foundation held its annual winter press conference. The air was sharp with January cold, the kind that cut through even the finest wool coats. The venue was the grand atrium of the Whitmore Tower, glass walls, marble floors, and a podium that had seen 100 photo ops, but never a confession. Raymond stood behind the velvet curtain, adjusting his tie for the 5th time. His assistant handed him the speech he'd written, edited, and rewritten again. He folded it in half, then again, then tucked it into his jacket pocket. He wouldn't be reading it. "Maya's not here," the assistant whispered, checking the front row. "At least, not that we can see." Raymond nodded once. "That's all right. This isn't about who's watching." Then he stepped out onto the stage. The crowd of journalists and cameras greeted him with the usual flashes and murmurs. They expected a donation announcement, a development update, maybe a new skyscraper. They didn't expect him to walk up to the microphone without a single slide, without a single branding banner behind him. "Good morning," he said. His voice echoed softly against the high glass ceiling. "Thank you for being here. Today, I was supposed to talk to you about investment growth and community expansion, but instead, I'm going to talk about something else, something I should have said a long time ago." He looked down, fingers brushing the folded speech in his pocket, then met their eyes again. "In 2001, I fell in love with a woman named Elise William. She was a painter. She was brilliant, stubborn, compassionate, and she was black." A few people in the audience shifted in their seats. Raymond didn't flinch. "At the time, I let fear guide my silence. My family, my reputation, my status, I let all of it speak louder than my heart. I walked away from her. I didn't fight for her. I told myself it was for the best. But the truth is, I was a coward." Gasps rippled quietly. One camera clicked louder than the rest. "I didn't know that when she left, she was pregnant. She didn't tell me. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she didn't trust me to stay, and I don't blame her." Raymond paused, letting the room settle into what he'd just said. 21 years later, her daughter found me, not with a lawyer, not with anger, just a quiet voice and a question I wasn't ready for. "Hi, sir. My late father had the same birthmark, right there." He lifted his hand briefly, touched the inside of his left wrist. "I don't tell you this for sympathy. I tell you because silence has a cost. Because love is not something we should be afraid to speak, no matter how powerful we are. Because the absence of action can be a betrayal just as deep as a lie." He stepped back from the microphone for a breath, then added, "I failed 2 people, and I can't change that, but I will spend the rest of my life honoring them." Then he walked off stage, no questions, no press release, just the truth, finally said aloud. Across the city, Maya sat on the worn couch in Mrs. Evans' living room, laptop open, live stream playing. The image was grainy, but the words came through clearly. She didn't move, not when he said her mother's name, not when he called himself a coward, not when he described her voice. Only when he lifted his wrist did she exhale, long and shaky. Mrs. Evans stood nearby, arms folded, a dish towel hanging from her shoulder. "He did it," she said softly. Maya didn't speak. Her throat felt too tight. He didn't hide behind lawyers or statements. He stood up. Maya nodded, but her hands were gripping the edge of the couch cushion so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Part of her had always believed that moment would never come. That men like him stayed silent forever, that the world let them. And yet, he had spoken. That evening, Maya walked alone through Lincoln Park, bundled in her mother's old coat. The lake wind bit at her cheeks, but she didn't mind. She walked until the sun dipped low, casting gold over the frozen water. When she reached the statue of the painter along the garden path, the one Elise used to sketch when Maya was little, she stopped, pulled out a small envelope from her bag. She'd written it last night, just in case. She opened it again, one more time. "Mr. Whitmore, thank you for saying her name. Thank you for saying mine. That day in the cafe, I didn't know what I wanted. But I think I wanted to see if the man you used to be could face the woman I am. You did, and that matters. I don't know where this goes next. I don't know what kind of family we could ever be, but I'm open to one conversation at a time. Maya." She placed the letter into the bronze hand of the statue. Just a gesture, a symbol, not for anyone to find, but for her to leave something behind. Then she turned and walked away, boots crunching softly in the snow. Raymond found the letter on his desk the next morning, delivered in a simple white envelope with no return address. He read it 3 times. His eyes stung, but he didn't wipe them. He placed it gently beside Elisa's old letters and Maya's childhood sketch, 3 hands on a table, 3 stories no longer hidden. For the first time in decades, Raymond didn't feel alone in his office. He felt seen. And maybe, just maybe, he could be someone worth seeing. 2 days after the press conference, Maya stood in front of a full-length mirror in the back room of a downtown art gallery. Her palms were sweating. She wasn't used to wearing heels or blazers or anything that made her look like she belonged on a panel. And yet, there she was, scheduled to speak at a community forum on art and identity, standing under a banner that read, "Legacy and Visibility, Stories Unforgotten." Her sketchbook was tucked under her arm, worn and frayed, the corners curling from years of being opened and reopened. On the front page, she had drawn her mother's eyes last night, not perfectly, but with care. She thought it might give her courage, not for the speech, but for whatever came after. The invitation to the forum had come the morning after Raymond's press conference, not from him, but from the gallery director, who had read her blog and said, "You've got a voice. We'd be honored if you used it here." She'd said yes before she had time to second-guess it. Mrs. Evans waited for her near the entrance of the gallery, bundled in her Sunday coat, eyes gleaming with pride. "He's coming," she whispered when Maya joined her. Maya didn't need to ask who. Raymond arrived alone. No assistant, no camera crew, no limo, just a quiet presence in a dark wool coat, standing by the door as if unsure he belonged. Their eyes met across the crowd. He nodded once. Maya didn't smile, but she didn't look away. The panel began with questions about community memory, forgotten voices, and the importance of personal archives. Maya listened quietly until the moderator finally turned to her. "Maya William," she said, "you've lived through a personal discovery that speaks to something larger about race, silence, and family. What do you think we risk when we let history remain untold?" Maya took the mic slowly, her fingers gripping it tighter than she meant to. "I think," she began, "we risk turning people into shadows, not just in public records or newspaper archives, but in our own lives. We forget who gave us the shape of our nose, the tone of our laugh. We pretend silence is safety, but it's not. It's a kind of theft." She paused, then continued quietly, "My mother was erased, not loudly, just gradually. And I lived with the echo of that. I didn't know my father's name until recently, but I always knew there was something missing, something deliberate. She glanced toward Raymond, who watched her with a face that held both sorrow and pride. "I don't speak today to shame anyone," she continued. "I speak because every child deserves to be known, not just as someone's daughter, but as someone with a story that matters. And sometimes, it takes 21 years and a single birthmark to begin telling it." The room was still for a long moment before quiet applause began, growing slowly, then filling the space with something more than approval, something like release. Afterward, Raymond waited by the refreshment table, holding a paper cup of black coffee he hadn't touched. When Maya approached, he straightened. "You spoke like someone who knows herself," he said gently. "I'm trying to," she replied. There was a pause between them, not tense, just honest. "I meant what I said," Raymond continued. "I don't want to push myself into your life, but I want to be there, if there's room, even just a corner." Maya looked down, then up again. "I don't have answers. I still feel fragile around all this, around you." "I know," he said, "but I think maybe we could take one step at a time." Raymond allowed himself a small smile. "I can walk slowly." They stood in silence for a few moments more, watching people mingle, listening to the sound of conversation ripple around them. Then Maya pulled something from her bag, a small wrapped box. "Here," she said, offering it. He opened it carefully. Inside was a framed print of the sketch she had drawn at 10, her mother, herself, and the imagined father, all three with matching birthmarks on their wrists. But now, Maya had added something new, a caption at the bottom, handwritten in pencil: "We were never lost, just waiting to be found." Raymond's fingers curled around the frame. His eyes watered, but he didn't wipe them. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting me be part of your truth." Maya nodded. Truth deserves witnesses, even late ones. They didn't hug, not yet. But they stood closer now, side by side, not as father and daughter in the full sense of the word, but as two people who were no longer pretending they hadn't once been bound by silence. And now, finally, by something deeper, recognition, choice, and the slow, sacred act of rebuilding. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and steady. Raymond offered his coat. Maya shook her head, smiled just a little, and said, "Let's walk." And so they did, under the quiet sky, each step a small promise. Savannah smelled the same, wet earth, sweet decay, Spanish moss hanging like whispers from the trees. Maya hadn't been back since her mother's funeral 8 years ago, and stepping off the train felt like walking into a memory soaked in sunlight and silence. Raymond stood beside her, both hands wrapped around a bouquet of white camellias. He had offered to drive them from the station, but Maya declined. She wanted to walk. She wanted the ache in her legs to match the ache in her chest. She didn't want this to be easy. They made their way through the old district in silence, past cobblestone alleys and wooden porches with rocking chairs still swaying. Every few steps, Raymond looked like he wanted to speak, but didn't. And for once, Maya didn't fill the silence. Some things didn't need words. When they reached Hillcrest Cemetery, the late afternoon sun spilled through the magnolia branches, dappling the gravestones with soft gold. Maya paused at the gate. Raymond did, too. "She used to bring me here on Sunday afternoons," Maya said. "Not just to visit Grandma. She'd sketch the trees, the angels, the way light touches stone. She said even cemeteries had stories worth telling." "She always saw what others overlooked," Raymond said, his voice low. "She saw me once, when I didn't know how to be seen." They followed the gravel path until they reached the headstone, simple, weathered. The engraved letters were slightly chipped from time but still clear. Elisa William, 1977 to 2015. She painted silence into color. Maya knelt beside it, running her fingers over the name. She didn't cry, not today. The grief had settled into a quieter place now, not gone, just less raw. Raymond stepped forward and gently placed the bouquet at the base of the grave. He remained standing, his expression unreadable. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his coat and took out something wrapped in velvet. "I wasn't sure when I'd give this to you," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "but I think this is the right place." He handed her the object. Maya unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a delicate silver locket, oval, worn smooth with time. She opened it. On one side was a photograph of her mother at 20, laughing, eyes shining. On the other, a small pressed flower, a white camellia. "She gave this to me once," Raymond said, his voice cracking slightly. "After our last night together. I didn't wear it. I didn't even open it again until last week." Maya held it in her hand, her thumb tracing the edge. She always loved giving people pieces of herself, tiny ones, like she was afraid to give too much. "She gave me more than I deserved," Raymond said, "and far more than I ever acknowledged." They stood in silence again, broken only by the soft rustle of wine through the magnolia. "She never wanted to be anyone's burden," Maya said, "not even mine. When she got sick, she used to leave voice notes on her phone, just in case. I still have them. I don't listen often, but sometimes I need her voice more than her advice." Raymond looked at her. "I wish I could have been there, for her, for both of you." "You weren't," Maya replied, not harshly, just honestly. "But you're here now, and you're not hiding." He gave a slow nod. "No, I'm not." Maya knelt again and placed the locket gently beside the flowers at the foot of the grave. "I think she would have liked this," she said quietly, "not because it's perfect, but because it's real." They stayed until the sun dipped low and the shadows grew long. Neither wanted to be the first to leave, but eventually, the chill crept in. Maya turned to go. Raymond lingered a moment longer, fingers brushing the top of the stone. Then he followed. As they walked back down the path, Raymond broke the silence. "When I was young, my father told me that emotion was weakness, that dignity meant silence. But your mother proved him wrong with every brushstroke she ever made." Maya looked over at him. "You don't need to be your father." He met her eyes. "I know. I'm trying not to be." As they reached the gate, Maya paused. "I want to come back here. Every year, on this day." "I'll come with you," Raymond said. Maya gave a small nod. "We'll see." Outside the cemetery, they stopped beneath a tree heavy with magnolia blossoms just beginning to bud. Raymond reached into his coat again and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to her. "What's this?" "Something I had written before we left Chicago. It's not legal, not official, just words. Mine." Maya unfolded the paper. It was a handwritten letter, neat, deliberate. "Dear Maya, I missed your birth, your first steps, your scraped knees, and late-night fevers. I missed your drawings on the fridge, your first heartbreak. I missed everything. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be here for what comes next. You don't have to forgive me, but I hope you'll let me earn a place in your life, not because of obligation, but because you believe I can add something true to it. Raymond." Maya folded the letter and tucked it into her coat. "Let's get some coffee," she said, surprising herself. "There's a place 2 blocks from here. It's not fancy, but their peach cobbler is exactly the way she used to make it." Raymond smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't tentative. "Lead the way." They walked side by side down the quiet Savannah street, no headlines, no expectations, just 2 people, once strangers, now something else. Something still unshaped, but alive. And above them, the magnolia branches swayed, whispering stories only the trees remembered. The cafe in Savannah was nothing special, brick walls painted white, a squeaky fan overhead, a chalkboard menu with smudged lettering, and a tip jar shaped like a mason jar labeled, "Give what you can, get what you need." But for Maya, it felt like home, one of the few places her mother used to take her when the cancer treatments allowed for small joys. Elise had loved the peach cobbler here. Maya remembered her humming quietly over a steaming cup of tea, napkin in her lap, sketching strangers with a pen that always ran out of ink halfway through. Now, decades later, Maya sat at the same table across from the man who might have once sat here too, if life had gone differently, if he'd made a different choice, if he'd chosen love over legacy. Raymond took a small bite of cobbler. Your mother had good taste. She usually did, Maya said softly, except when it came to trusting silence. He nodded, accepting the sting. She deserved more than what I gave her. She deserved to be fought for. Maya watched him for a moment. Why didn't you? His fork paused midair. He set it down slowly, then looked her in the eye. I was raised to believe the world belonged to men like me, as long as we didn't make waves. My father made it clear, love her, and you lose everything, money, respect, inheritance. And I was too young, or too cowardly, to see that what I lost by staying quiet was greater than anything they could have taken from me. Maya didn't respond right away. She just sipped her tea and let that settle in the space between them. You said something at the gallery, Raymond continued, about being known not just as someone's daughter, but as someone with a story that matters. I want you to know you matter, Maya, not because you're my daughter, but because of who you've become, despite everything I wasn't. The words weren't perfect, but they were real, and that mattered more. Maya looked down at the locket now hanging from a thin silver chain around her neck, the one he'd given her at the cemetery. She rubbed her thumb over it. You know, I used to imagine you showing up at school when I was little, she said, standing by the door at parent-teacher night. Just once. I didn't care if you were rich. I just wanted someone to show up. Raymond's jaw tightened. I hate that I wasn't there. I don't need you to hate it, she said. I need you to carry it, so you don't repeat it. He nodded slowly. I'm trying. Maya leaned back. And I'm trying to let you. That's the hard part. Outside the cafe, rain had begun to fall, soft, southern rain that felt more like memory than weather, the kind her mother used to paint as streaks of watercolor blue on brown paper. Maya stood and pulled her coat around her shoulders. Walk me to the train station. Of course, Raymond said, already reaching for his umbrella. They walked slowly down the wet sidewalk, neither speaking at first. Passing old bookstores and empty porches, they moved in step, the sound of their shoes muted by rain. At the station, Maya paused under the awning. This doesn't fix everything, she said. There's a lot we won't get back. I know, he said. But it's something, a start. She studied him. This man who looked like power but now carried humility in his spine, like a new kind of strength. My mom once said that love wasn't just about being there, Maya said. It was about staying, even when it's inconvenient, even when it hurts. I'm not leaving, Raymond said. She looked at him for a moment longer, then did something she hadn't done before, she stepped forward and hugged him. It wasn't long, it wasn't tight, but it was full. When she pulled away, she said, next year, same day. Magnolia tree. He smiled, something warm blooming behind his eyes. I'll be there, even if you're not. She stepped onto the train without looking back, not because she didn't care, but because she finally didn't have to wonder if he'd disappear. Raymond stood on the platform long after the train pulled away, umbrella forgotten at his side. Rain traced lines down his face, but he didn't move. He felt them not as drops, but as permission, to feel, to regret, to rebuild. Back in Chicago a week later, Maya returned to the art studio where she taught on weekends. One of her students, a girl barely 10, asked her if grown-ups ever got scared. All the time, Maya answered with a smile, but some of them keep showing up anyway. Later that night, she added a new drawing to her sketchbook. It was of 3 hands, one weathered, one youthful, and one that held both. On each wrist, the same crescent birthmark, not a label, but a legacy rewritten. Sometimes family isn't built in hospital rooms or holiday dinners. Sometimes it's forged in rain, in silence, in truth spoken late but spoken nonetheless. And sometimes, it begins with a choice someone once failed to make, finally made.